Does enlightenment mean the end of pain and pleasure? That is a good question. Who wrote that? So often when I'm working with people, something that surprises people often is that I can feel pleasure and pain. And that surprises me that they are surprised, if I'm honest with you. So I'm surprised they are surprised. Pardon me, because I can't imagine what they must imagine the experience is like inside body. So realizing non-duality to me doesn't mean the end of pleasure and pain. Maybe some people say that, but that's certainly not my experience. It might be that they're more enlightened, might be they're in denial, might be they have a sense of grandiosity, could be they're a liar, it could be all types of things. I don't know. If you've not had that experience, you can't know that experience. So for me, I experience, or Lisa, or in this body, there is the experience of pleasure and pain. So if somebody hits me across the face, it hurts. If somebody hits Khaleesi, it hurts, doesn't it? It hurts me. It hurts in my heart. And I can also have psychological pain as well. Like, so I was speaking with someone yesterday on the phone, and they were asking, you know, like, how can I be upset about Brexit? I'm not really upset about Brexit because I don't really spend much time thinking about it, but it is a little bit what's the right word for it? Like, it's complex feelings, because I've had now like 5 or 6 times where I've been taken right to the brink of there being a no deal, and like the night before they decide that there is a deal or that they're going to suspend it. And what that means for me, if there's a no deal, is I wake up in the morning with having no rights. So many of you that are listening, as citizens in your country, not all of you have rights. You have rights to healthcare, you have rights to I don't know, education maybe, or you have rights to live there, you have rights to be in your home, all types of rights. But if they have a no deal, and because I live in mainland EU, my rights get taken away. And I'm really sure that the country that I'm living in is not going to be cruel in any way, so they're not going to chuck me out or anything. But I'm suddenly without any visa in my home. I have no rights in my home. And that is like, it's like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's stressful, as like stressful isn't quite the right word for it. I just can't explain that bundle of emotions that come. We're just coming up to another one. So today they said that they would know whether it was a deal or a no deal. And again, they've postponed it. It's like endless. But it's now like I couldn't give a flying F about it, to be honest, now, because I've been through it so many times before. I kind of like, who knows, maybe I never become without any rights. Maybe that never happens. They're going to have a deal. Who knows? And that can be painful. Now it's not painful. Like it's like 2 weeks away, and I don't have any pain about it or anything. But you just don't know. Like, I don't know if there's a no deal, will I have healthcare? And you know, I just don't know anything because there's no rules to it. But yeah, so it's an interesting situation, and that is painful. Like, I can tell you that there's a few times when there's been a vote, my heart's like, I've had adrenaline, like listening and to the vote as to what's going to happen, whether there's going to be a deal or a no deal, or hard exit or not hard exit. Yeah. To my true nature, my true nature doesn't care, and my true nature is always free. But the body is designed to have responses. If it doesn't have responses, then you're going to become a walking zombie. I mean, how are you going to navigate anything? How are you going to navigate being in this society if you have no pain or pleasure? Like, so my pleasure would be for England not to leave the EU, but what's happening is they are leaving the EU, and that's painful. And then there's varying degrees of pain dependent on like the extremity of that leaving. And it's also painful to hear English people telling me that they're doing it because of the immigrants. I find that personally painful. Maybe because I've been an immigrant for so many years, maybe that's part of it, or I just have compassion or empathy. I find that very painful. I find it a lot easier to accept if people talk about business and about that it will be better for business than I find people saying it's because of immigrants. And also because I find these borders that we have, like this is my country and that is your country, and that we're tradable, that you can trade humans. Like, so the law was that in the EU you could trade humans, so I as an artist could go and work in France as an artist, but now that human is no longer tradable. Like, I find that tough, like that we all have these countries that we belong to. We can see problems with it if we didn't have countries, because there's so many different cultures that would struggle to live together and it might create war. But I still find the general idea of it sad. And so when people blame immigration, I find that sad. Hurts. And I have wants and likes. And I can't imagine somebody functioning in this society without that. So to me, the idea of somebody waking up and the human having no pleasure and pain anymore, and no conditions, no genetic makeup and no karma, it's like, to me, the person would be dead. Like, they wouldn't be able to walk around this planet, because how would you know to eat or to be hungry or to go for a poo? Because all of these are done by indications of pleasure and pain. It's the same as when you see things. To me, waking up is the attachment to that. So there is this consciousness, which you could say is no thing and all things. So there is a consciousness that's experiencing itself, and then there is the person. And when you're asleep in the dream, the person and consciousness are like welded together, and it feels like you are that person, and that's your limitation. And through that, you feel seeking because of it. You feel a discomfort because it's not true. You're not limited. Your essence isn't limited. But that limitation creates a seeking in the body, and that seeking in the body makes the person, the human being, stay predominantly in time, predominantly in thinking and longing for something else than what's actually happening. And that, so waking up to me is the separation between the person and the consciousness. And from my experience, you can be less identified and more identified once that break has been made. When you're like totally unidentified, and this is just my experience, that this is maybe really different to what other people say and what the books say, but when you're totally unidentified, you can't really function. So that total disidentification can only really happen when you're not really using the body. Otherwise, you can't really function. You can't know space or distance or time. The body can be on some sort of like robotic programming, like a baby or something, but you need more identification for more complex functioning. And so for me, like, the waking up happens. And this is maybe a bit of a change of what I've said over the years, or maybe not, because I've got a terrible memory. I always say to my partner, like, I've just realized this. And he's like, you've been saying that for like 10, oh no, they haven't known me 10 years, but like 5 years, 4 years. You've been saying that loads of times. I'm like, oh, that felt new. often things feel new for me. That is something that maybe came from waking up. And so when you're totally unidentified, that can only be in when the body is really not doing much. And then there can be varying degrees of identification that goes and comes. But normally when waking up happens, I presume there is this cut down, like for maybe some people there isn't, maybe they go like that. But a lot of the time when you have these big awakenings or just a shift, there is like a cut, and you no longer are totally identified with that person anymore. You no longer like go totally into the dream. There is always the connection to self. But if you're doing more complex things, like arguing with your partner, you have to be more identified. It works better. The argument lasts longer if you're less identified. But that's sometimes complex because you're both trying to determine like what you want and what the other person's done or not done. Yes. So that's my experience of it, and that's what I'm teaching. So the two different things that I teach is the waking up part, which I've just been explaining to you, and then I also speak about settling down the person. I speak about settling down the person because if the person is really chaotic and the person is really suffering, it's very hard to speak about non-duality. So when you're in lots of like emotional and physical pain and mental pain, then you tend to be very contracted to the body. And then that becomes very hard to talk about non-duality. That doesn't mean that you've lost connection with Source though, because you could be in lots of emotional, physical and mental pain even, and there can be the disconnection from that person and this freedom to what you are. So it's not like that is the way it is, but it tends to be, it's more complex. I also feel like it's a little bit, I feel a little bit of a duty to address the person to an extent, because non-duality is so extreme, and although it's true in, you can't put it in words, but what it's pointing to is true and beautiful, it can be really severely misinterpreted for the person. So I feel like speaking about the person and relaxing the person kind of like catches those people in the net that are misinterpreting non-duality and helps them become more balanced with what they're feeling. Because, you know, if you take some of these ideas on a personal level, that you are nobody, that there is nothing, that nobody exists, and you're taking that on personally, then that can be maybe a little bit dangerous for the person, or a little bit like create more problems for the person. Although I don't know that, because that's just my perspective on it. Because really, like if you're hearing non-duality from a teacher that's like energetically knows non-duality, not mentally knows non-duality, then that's really a gift. So I don't know for sure. And I say really why that's a gift, because you can like resonate with their energy when listening to non-duality. I'm sure many of you know that, and that can be really beautiful, and it really doesn't matter what they're saying. But it's just when they leave the room and then they're like, I am nobody, I can kill you because I'm nobody, then, you know, can become a bit problematic. So you can find stuff on my reference page on my website as to things I recommend to help settle down the person. But even in recommending that, I'm not saying that there is somebody there that's doing that. Like that will either happen or not, the person will become more settled. But I'm not saying there is a person there. Like, who is that? Who are you right now? Who let the dogs out? Who is looking? There is looking happening. There is hearing happening. There is experiencing happening, but it's not for anyone. There is a person that comes up with thoughts, and there's a body that has habits and conditions and reacts and has emotions and feelings and sensations. But that's not you. That's an experience happening in you. Like something prior to that is experiencing it. So something knows that, it's peering in the film. Something is seeing that. that person isn't experiencing. We always think that person is alive and experiencing, but how can it be experiencing if it can be seen? If it can be seen, that means it's part of the experience. You can see how there's an energy identifying with part of the experience. And it's so crazy, the ideas that we think we are, like I am tall. Yes, that's maybe a description of the body, but that's not who you are. Like to believe that's who you are, then you become in a box. I am good. That might be a description of the body, which is debatable because we, like, what is good and bad if we get really existential about it? But even that idea, like I am good, it's like you're putting a chain on yourself. Like all the time you have to be presenting to people that you're good. I am good. Look how good I am. Hello everybody, I'm good. Whereas this is just something that happens to the body. It's either good or bad. Some bodies have more tendency to being cooperative and to fitting in. That doesn't necessarily mean goodness though, because we don't really know what that is. It's just something that we've defined as humans and we all collectively agree on it. I'm sure that the bees and the ants and the insects do not think that we're good. When they're when we're buying fair trade and we think we're all good, I'm sure that the insects were wishing that we did a lot less trade and destroyed their home a lot less. So it's really debatable. So you might think that you're good for buying fair trade, but that's from whose perspective? From the perspective of not enslaving people to work. So it's in comparison to, if you don't buy fair trade, then it means that most of your stuff comes from slavery, modern day slavery, which I'm not criticizing because all of us do that are in the West. I mean, just if you have a phone, I assume that it's made in Asia for unfair prices. Yeah, we all know this. So I'm sorry that I do that, but that happens through me. And I feel compassion and empathy for people out there that are not being paid fairly for their work. That's really sad that that happens. And I'm sorry that I participate in it. Yes. Yes, okay, we got off track there. Lisa went into a sorry monologue. So that's part of my personality structure to do that. And you could psychoanalyze that and that's because of this, because of that, because the mother did this and the mother did that and the father didn't do this and the father did that. So that's part of the Lisa structure, but that's not who's speaking now. That's not who's experiencing now. That is an experience. And it's all about that detachment from the person, because when you believe you are that person, you'll never be free, because you'll always be looking for freedom in a thing, in what you are, in what you can become, in what you do. And in the end, like, what you do isn't your actions anyway, because you never chose to have your thoughts and feelings and ideas and conditions and the life and the interaction. So whatever you do is dependent on your karma, even though it comes with the idea that I did it. That's total illusion. Who did it? Who is acting now? Like, who is thinking now? Who does all of that? Who let the dogs out? Who? Look at this as well. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. So that is that. Who is it? Who did that? Who got distracted? Your idea is me. I'm sitting here. I'm looking. I'm listening to Lisa because I chose to and I like her. That is simply the body has these responses. But these responses in the body are way deeper than you know. They need some form of conscious thinking to be able to do these complex actions. But that conscious thinking that says, I like Lisa, or I can do this, or I'm going to sit here, affects the body, but it's not actually an independent doer. It's a happening. It's not actually somebody. It has an effect. It's reprogramming the unconscious, but it's not a person. It's not a person. So by you going, okay, Lisa is on at 6 p.m. French time, I'm going to listen to it, then there is a programming into the body from that thought. But that thought that comes up is also part of the body, but it's part of the conscious mind rather than the unconscious mind. So it's like this circular pattern that's happening between the conscious mind and unconscious mind. So the conscious mind puts in information, it goes into the unconscious, and then action comes out. And I think that they say like something like 90% of our thoughts are in our way and our actions is unconscious. That's crazy, but I don't know about these numbers. I forget these things.